Good day, everyone. For teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We start off in Cuba, where the 3 Cuban anti-terrorist agents arrested in the United States in 1998 have been reunited with their families. The reunification comes in the wake of historic announcements by both Cuba and United States governments outlining a normalization in relations between the two countries. The Cubans were jailed in 1998 after infiltrating terrorist groups in Miami that were threatening the Caribbean islands' population. Their arrest had been condemned as unjust because the Cubans had shared their intelligence with the FBI and other U.S. authorities who knew about their operations. The 3 Cubans who were released on Wednesday were the last of the 5 who had been imprisoned in the United States. Upon receiving Wednesday's news, some Cubans took to the streets in spontaneous celebrations. For over 50 years, the island nation has been subjected to an economic blockade that has decimated the country's economy and its ability to obtain necessary goods. Those include medical supplies and pharmaceuticals. Many see the news as a U.S. admission that its aggressive stance against Cuba has failed. And for more now on the normalization of relations between Washington and Havana, we go to our correspondent in the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C., Alexandra Hall.
It started with the surprise release of the 3 remaining Cuban 5 prisoners and also U.S. government contractor Alan Gross. But it was a historic day as Cuba and the United States have reopened diplomatic relations for the first time since 1961. In an address to the Cuban people on Wednesday, President Raul Castro said that the reopening is directly in line with the principles of the Cuban Revolution. And President Obama, for his part, acknowledged that U.S. policy towards Cuba had failed. Now, let's remember that Cuba is still on the United States list of state sponsors of terrorism and that the economic embargo is still in place. Only Congress can remove it, and as the Republicans are poised to take control of both houses of Congress in January, that could be a difficult task for the Obama administration. In Washington, I'm Alexandra Hall for teleSUR.
Thanks to Alexandra. Let's take a look now at the main points addressed by both President Obama and President Raul Castro. The U.S. president recognized that the U.S. blockade and sanctions policy on the island has failed. He also announced that the U.S. will ease trade restrictions, will allow banks to operate in the island, and will also allow U.S. citizens to travel to the country. Diplomatic relations will also be fully reestablished, marking the biggest change in U.S. policy toward Cuba since 1960, when the North American country broke ties with the island. Raul Castro also spoke Wednesday about the landmark decision of the reestablishment of diplomatic relations between both countries. Castro praised the Cuban people for resisting the blockade, which he said demonstrates that the people of the island are committed to the revolution. While praising Obama for making the right decision, the Cuban president also emphasized the need to lift the blockade. He concluded his remarks by announcing that both countries will continue bilateral talks. And news of the normalization of relations with Cuba was met with anger by some conservative sectors of the U.S. political establishment. Cuban-American leader and Senator Marco Rubio condemned Obama as being, quote, willfully ignorant about how the world truly works, and stating that the announcement by Obama of an improvement in relations is a victory for Cuba. Meanwhile, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who was exploring a presidential bid in 2016, called the move, quote, ill-advised.
It is a victory for the oppressive Cuban
And also out of Cuba, the Colombia peace talks finished their 31st cycle there following testimony given by the victims of the armed conflict. The negotiations will now enter an end-of-the-year pause. The final cycle was marked by the unilateral declaration of a ceasefire made by the FARC guerrilla group. The victims who participated in the dialogue urged both the state and the rebels to halt the violence as proof of their commitment to peace.
Daré la palabra al doctor
And for more now on the close of this cycle of peace talks, we go to our correspondent Charles Parkinson in Bogota.
This morning, the Colombian government issued an official statement responding to yesterday's announcement by the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia that they'll be implementing a unilateral ceasefire as of Saturday the 20th of December. The government welcomed that announcement, saying it was a step in the right direction. However, they rejected the possibility of themselves entering a ceasefire and reiterated the position that they've always upheld, which is that a bilateral ceasefire will only be considered once a final agreement has been signed. Now, in yesterday's statement, the FARC called for international monitoring of the ceasefire, something the government today rejected. And they also said that if the government continues to attack their units, then it could bring an end to the ceasefire. Now the question is, while the government refuses to enter into any sort of official ceasefire, will they now scale back their attacks on guerrilla units and their bombardments of guerrilla strongholds in order to preserve the FARC ceasefire? Charles Parkinson in Bogota, Colombia.
Thanks to Charles. We go to the city of Paraná, Argentina now, where the 47th summit of the Common Market of the South has concluded. Presidents worked together to build stronger integration in the region. We go now to our correspondent Leonel Poblete in Argentina.
Following the formal greeting of the heads of state, a long working meeting between the presidents to analyse the situation of Mercosur was held.
It is impossible to integrate oneself into the world if one is not first integrated in the region.
Si previamente no se está integrado en la región.
El nuevo Mercosur nació al calor de los liderazgos que fueron surgiendo del presidente Lula.
There is a new Mercosur, born from the fire of the leadership of Lula, Kirchner, Tabaré, the leadership of Hugo Chavez, and his obsessive drive.
Regresáramos a donde jamás debimos haber salido, a nuestro Suramérica.
The historic resumption of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States was not absent at the summit.
Ahí está Cuba testimoniando que
We are very happy as Argentines, as South Americans, as global citizens, as political actors by the announcement of the restoration of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States.
más tarde o más temprano tienen su dignidad y llegan a sus objetivos.
Argentina handed over the pro-temporary presidency of Mercosur to Brazil, which will work to advance the entrance of Bolivia as a full member of the body. The potential of Mercosur's human and natural resources to become a privileged part in the world were underlined by the leaders at the summit, which also reaffirmed their commitment to the need for more regional integration. From Paraná, Argentina, Leonel Poblete Goduti, teleSUR.
Thanks to Leonel. We go to Central America now, where the Honduran government has illegally dismissed 8,000 public employees under pressure from the International Monetary Fund. The move comes in direct violation of the country's labor laws, leaving many with hope that they will, in fact, get their jobs back. Here's Gerardo Torres.
This month, 8,000 public employees of several state companies in Honduras have been fired without warning, a move which goes against the country's labor laws.
No llevó a cabo ese proceso. Eso implica
The state didn't follow the correct process. This means that the state will have to pay damages, in addition to 4 months' salary. Each worker should also be paid another 30 days of salary as compensation.
le tiene que pagar una indemnización de 30 días de salarios a cada uno.
This could mean around $5,000 each, meaning a total of around $16 million that the state will have to pay.
Jurídicamente, de conformidad a la ley, está para ganar.
We are working within the law, and in this case we can't lose. But we have a government that has ignored its institutions, where there is no separation of powers, and a state in which every office responds to the interests of President Juan Orlando Hernández.
Donde la institucionalidad casi toda o toda está sometida a las directrices del presidente Juan Orlando Hernández.
Other union leaders believe that the agreement with the International Monetary Fund is so strong that the government is willing to continue with the privatization of an important portion of public property.
We are seeing that there are around 140,000 workers in the public sector, but only 100,000 will remain. That means 40,000 dismissals will take place in the next 3 years, and they have already begun.
The International Monetary Fund and the Honduran government have become a much more profound stage of neoliberalism. Yet organized workers are fighting for their rights and are pushing to stop the accelerated privatization. However, they also need the participation of other social movements. Gerardo Torres, teleSUR, Central America.
Thanks to Gerardo. Thursday, the European Parliament approved a new set of sanctions against Venezuela. The vote comes as victims of violent street protests in Venezuela are in Europe. They traveled there to show the brutality of the right-wing demonstrations in Venezuela, which killed some 40 people in February this year. The sanctions come as a show of support by the European Union to right-wing leader Leopoldo Lopez, who was jailed for his links to the violent outburst. Russian President Vladimir Putin offered his annual press conference on Thursday addressing the nation's economic situation. The value of the Russian ruble has plunged as oil prices continue to drop around the world. Putin explained that his nation's economic recovery could take up to 2 years. He blamed the current situation on the West, blaming Western sanctions for undermining Russian economic independence. Putin also clarified during his address that state spending cuts would not affect public workers, pensions, nor Russia's defense budget. To the U.S. now, where New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo announced Wednesday that he will ban hydraulic fracking in the state because of health risks. The decision was immediately praised by environmental groups. Cuomo's administration concluded that the extraction method could contaminate water and air. And in sports, the British Army football team took on the German Armed Forces squad on Wednesday. The match was held to commemorate the Christmas truce held between Britain and France during World War I. The event was accompanied by a Christmas carol opera by singer Marilina Grant. The teams were led onto the field by men dressed as World War I soldiers. The match was meant to remember a key moment in history and the importance of reconciliation. When we're not on the air, check out our website at telesurtv.net/English for teleSUR English. I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.